Thank you for watching. In my last video, God Code Trust, I ended by stating that we needed to be able to trust some of the industries that are moving technology forward, or AI, as AI is, one of the biggest things in technology right now. My videos will build upon each other, so I might allude to something that was explained in more detail in a previous video, so you might have to watch some of those. In this one, I want to expand on that, about why we need to be concerned about trusting technological companies that are looking to advance AI. As I've mentioned before, life evolves biologically, cognitively, and technologically. Pretty much in that order. Life evolved biologically, which after a certain amount of time allowed us to evolve cognitively. Once we evolved the biological means to support cognitive evolution, as we evolved cognitively, we were able to evolve more technologically. Each vehicle of evolution should enhance, at the very least facilitate the previous vehicles, but ideally enhance. As we evolved cognitively, anything that would hinder biological evolution would also ultimately lead to death, right? If the cognitive evolution doesn't facilitate the biological evolution, then that leads to death. Life, in its quest to be better and to persist, those other vehicles of evolution should enhance the prior so that it can be built upon, right? So we want to make sure that technology is facilitating biological and cognitive evolution, but also enhancing them to make life better, to help life persist. Business is a means to either facilitate or capitalize on one of these vehicles of evolution. A good business, going back to the good choice, which is in turn the God choice, a good business looks to facilitate evolution and then to capitalize. Facilitating evolution should be prioritized. Why is that? Question could arise: why should facilitating evolution be prioritized over capitalizing? Capitalism. The answer goes to a number of things. One, the good choice is in line with the God choice. The God choice involved in that is evolving towards God and evolving to be able to coexist as higher thinking beings. A good business, in line with the good choice, seeks to do that. It seeks to facilitate the enhancement and persistence of life. Another reason why facilitating should be prioritized is because capitalism, as we know it, is full of deception. Capitalism, or capitalizing, isn't necessarily the problem. It's the deception that is rampant in capitalism as we know it. Capitalism is basically about chasing the dollar, accumulating wealth. On our money that represents worth or wealth, it says, "In God we trust." So, in that system, God rules, or God code, as I like to think of it, should be implemented. But as we know, if you do your research and you dig a bit, capitalism does not play by God rules. Capitalism plays by devil rules. There's no love or really concern in capitalism. Ultimately, the goal is to amass as much capital as possible, usually at the expense of others, either health or their ability to do the same. So, facilitating either biological, cognitive, or technological growth should be prioritized because it's in line with the good choice, and also it helps to combat deception and greed in the business world, which I'm turning this way a little bit, which is not good for everyone. Greed and deception only benefits minority, as it's established. Slight tangent, but it seems like capitalism, democracy, things like that are some of the things we allow ourselves to indulge in fantasy in. They don't exist how they should exist. They don't exist how we want them to exist. But we still participate and perpetuate them. And we kind of indulge in the fantasy that, they work how they're supposed to work. But if someone starts to talk about like love and peace, that sounds like something that's not attainable. But we don't allow, we think of that as like utopian fantasy, but we don't allow ourselves to indulge in that fantasy. I don't think it's a fantasy. I think it's very attainable if enough people actually try to implement it, and hold those most accountable, the people that are most able to affect that. The more people that hold them accountable, the more it's attainable. But let's just assume it is wishful thinking, which capitalism is wishful thinking. Is wishful thinking as it's playing out right now. Wishful thinking that if anybody can amass this wealth as long as they try hard and give it their all. The American dream is sold, but it's not actualized for every American. So where's the disconnect? It's a delusion to assume that capitalism, as we know it, benefits everybody. It's a delusion to assume that democracy, as it exists, benefits everybody. Of course, they could benefit everybody, but it doesn't. But we allow ourselves to be deluded to think that because it's possible, that it is and it will. On the same side, we don't allow ourselves. If you think it's a delusion, if you want to be involved in delusions, I would say it's a better delusion to undertake, to believe that everybody can live their best life. But ego and evil get in the way. So that's why in business, facilitating evolution in one of those vehicles, biological, cognitive, technological, should be prioritized. Artificial intelligence is the trinity of these three means of evolution. If you don't believe me, listen to Klaus Schwab, who's the founder of the World Economic Forum.
It's at the end what the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
Notice here he says physical, digital, and biological. And we'll get into that. As I mentioned, each step should facilitate and ultimately enhance the previous. So we, as technology is emerging, AI is the biggest thing in technology. We want to make sure that AI is in facilitating and enhancing our biological and cognitive evolution. If it's not, then that's a problem. We have to make sure that this technological advancement preserves the prior vehicles of evolution. Why would they be concerned that it wouldn't? There's a number of reasons that we can go over right now. So let's first take a look at an article from the BBC, October 2015. It states the web has deluded you, and don't pretend it hasn't. And they speak, and I'll leave a link in the description. They speak about transactive memory. Transactive memory is the idea that we rely on other people in other parts of the world, which are books or objects, to remember things for us. In regard to transactive memory, it states part of this phenomenon is a tendency to then confuse what we really know and our personal memories with what we have easy access to, the knowledge that is readily available in the world, or which we are merely familiar with without actually understanding in depth. It can feel like we understand how a car works, the argument goes, when in fact we are merely familiar with making it work. I press the accelerator and it goes forward, neglecting to realize that I don't really know how it goes forward. So this is a cognitive issue. And also, the American Psychological Association has some research here, searching for explanations how the internet inflates estimates of internal knowledge. The abstract states, as internet has become a nearly ubiquitous resource for acquiring knowledge about the world, questions have arisen about its potential effects on cognition. Here we show that searching the internet for explanatory knowledge creates an illusion whereby people mistake access to information for their own personal understanding of the information. Evidence from 9 experiments shows that searching for information online leads to an increase in self-assessed knowledge, as people mistakenly think they have more knowledge in the head, even seeing their own brains as more active as depicted by functional MRI images. So again, this is about effects on cognition that have come about through the advent of the internet, like one of the biggest technological advances that we know, that humanity's known. So this is an example of how technology can adversely affect cognitive evolution. So we need to be sure that AI, which is pretty much the biggest thing in technology right now, benefits all of humanity. Let's look at a few things here. This is an article in Today. The dates April 30th, 2013. Girl 2 is first child to receive artificial windpipe. At 2.5 years old, Hannah Warren has never played outside with her big sister or run through the grass on a sunny day. The Korean girl has been unable to breathe, talk, eat, or drink on her own since she was born without a windpipe. The rare congenital condition kept her hospitalized for her entire life in a Seoul neonatal intensive care unit, where a tube from her mouth to her lung kept her alive. It goes on to say, without a trachea transplant, she would have died, but that all changed earlier this month when Hannah became the first child in the world to receive a bio-artificial trachea made from stem cells from her own bone marrow in a pioneering operation at Children's Hospital of Illinois. He goes on to speak about the lead surgeon, Dr. Paolo Macchiarini of Italy, how he's made history before, and so forth. So this was a first of its kind type of transplant, which is basically like a marriage of technology and biology. This ostensibly should enhance our biological evolution. That would be a good business. Well, if we look a little bit more in this article on CBS News, which is from July 25th, 2013, we see 2-year-old pioneer of stem cell trachea transplant dies. So she unfortunately did pass away not too long after. And then if we go back to the first article and we dig a little bit more, we look at her lead surgeon, Paolo Macchiarini. If we do a little bit of digging on him, and this is an example because this one is a little bit more publicized. But if we do a little digging on him, he is surrounded by scandal. We can see here Paolo Macchiarini, surgeon convicted for fatal Swedish transplants. This was reported by BBC News. And then we can see here in an article published by the Teller Report, this is what happened, the scandal surrounding Paolo Macchiarini. I'll leave links to all of these in the description. But basically, between the years of 2011 and 2013, Macchiarini performs a total of 8 similar transplants with synthetic trachea, 3 in Sweden, another 5 in Russia and the US. 7 of the patients die later. The 8th patient has the artificial trachea removed and is still alive. So why am I showing this? This shows how a brand new technology can be exciting. And from the outside it can look beneficial, but once you look into it, this guy was pretty much a fraud. Again, I'll leave descriptions. You have his name. You can look it all up. I'm not going to go into that whole story, but he basically was found out to be a fraud. Before then, he had amassed a lot of wealth and a lot of fame. And this is the problem when facilitating evolution isn't prioritized over capitalizing off of it. This guy was basically capitalizing off of this technology that looked like it would be a boon to the medical world, which in turn assists in our biological evolution. But unfortunately, that was not the case. He was employed at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, which is what they're the ones that determine who win the Nobel Prize in medicine. So this is like a reputable, institute. This is one of the leading institutes, medical institutes. So there's if you look into the story, there's controversy surrounding them keeping him on even after some of the stuff started to come to light. There was a lot of red flags that were ignored. In my previous video, God Code Trust, I talked about through God's wisdom, seeing the red flags and knowing, trustworthiness. There's a lot of red flags in this one example, but there's many other examples. Something I found odd, and I'm not sure what to make of it yet, but if we look at this article published by Fox News, we see the date is October 27th, 2015. 2-year-old girl gets windpipe made from stem cells. And as we know, she unfortunately passed away in 2013, a few months after the operation. But this article makes no mention of that. I'll leave this link in the bio. It makes no mention of Macchiarini's scandal. That one is a little more forgivable because I'm not sure. Like behind the scenes, there was accusations being made, but I don't know how publicized it was. But definitely, Hannah Warren had passed away by now. It makes no mention of that, but it does mention that scientists hope to eventually use the method to create solid organs, including kidneys and livers. And then it even ends by stating, in regard to Hannah Warren, she breathes with help from a ventilator, but no longer has a tube in her mouth that she lived with since shortly after birth. She's not yet able to eat normally, but doctors let her have her first taste ever of food, a few licks of a lollipop. Her father said she already has discriminating taste and prefers chocolate Korean lollipops to the American kind. I asked her, is it good? And she immediately nodded her head. That's how the article ends. It's a very happy ending, which unfortunately we know the story didn't end that way. So it's a little misleading. With this being published 2015, it seems like a narrative is being pushed. We know that one of the missions for the Great Reset involves 3D printing organs as opposed to organ donation. So we're gonna have to look into that a bit more to see what exactly is there. Because remember, the problem with capitalism is the deception that runs rampant and seems to fuel it. This seems to be pretty deceptive here. That they'll be printing like 3D organs, and that organ transplants won't be an issue anymore. That sounds great, but that has to be actually what's happening, because we can see that you can get sold a dream if you don't look into it enough. Even if the argument's made that he was basically trying to help these people, one or two, okay, but when it's like 8 people, and then the one that only lived, no, I can't say only lived, but the one that got the trachea removed, he lived. Like, at one point, is this like human experimenting? Klaus Schwab stating that we are at a turning point of humankind. We should not underestimate the historical significance of the situation we are in. Notice he says a turning point of humankind. Very interesting. I have to pay attention to what these people say. He also stated a new world could emerge, the contours of which it is incumbent on us to reimagine and to redraw. Now, when he says us, he's not talking to me. He's not talking to probably most of the people that might be watching this. He's talking to his constituents at the World Economic Forum. He's speaking to the other participants, the other global elites that attend the World Economic Forum. He's speaking to them because for whatever reason, Our existence is constructed so that they make the decisions. They have the most power because they have the most money, which is weird. Other flags or causes for concern, and we'll go into some of these in more depth in a different video. This will probably be a multi-parter. But the World Economic Forum in 2019, I believe it was October 2019, held a pandemic event 201. They held a pandemic planning, like, simulation scenario type thing. And then lo and behold, said pandemic happens. They routinely speak about seizing opportunity and the capital and financial benefits that will arise from seeking this opportunity. So you have, again, listening to the words that they're using, it's a little sus. We got to look into it, because again, it affects us all. Business is a means to facilitate and then capitalize off of a means of evolution. As we can see, when capitalization becomes paramount to facilitation, bad things happen. For instance, in psychology, which is supposed to be a field that facilitates cognitive evolution, when they become too married with the pharmaceutical industry, you're no longer really evolving cognitively. You're just kind of stunting cognitive growth. So we have technology that's hindering or affecting cognitive evolution. We have things in the pharmaceutical industry and psychological industry that have become more commercialized, from what I see. And if I'm wrong, let me know. Correct my ways. Those industries are mostly commercial, right? It's you get the appearance of really helping people emotionally, mentally, psychologically, but ultimately the primary purpose in those businesses and that facilities is capital. That's not across the board, but I'm speaking to the companies that have the most power and the most ability to affect things are allowing capitalism to interfere with their mission of enhancing cognitive evolution. We see technology is affecting our cognition. We know medicine, and that's something we can get into a bit more. But we see that they're affecting our cognitive abilities. We tend to think of people as robotic when they show less emotion, less feelings, less cognition. We think of them as robotic. Humans have feelings and emotions and things like that. Capitalism, there's no place, as it is now, there's no place for feelings and emotion. Capitalism, as we know it, is win at all costs, maximize profits, increase margins, with what's been shown with some of the biggest companies to be with minimal regard for others, for life in some instances. So capitalism hinges on robotic ideology, if you think about it. The more you can remove feeling and emotion from business, the more you can capitalize. Business is often thought of as a machine, the machine. Especially when you start talking about the World Economic Forum. These are trillion-dollar, companies and people. Machines need cogs to work. Machines need gears to work. Gears grind. You gotta grind for the machine. To eliminate feeling and emotion so that the cogs keep the machine moving. A robot can be used as a tool, right? Once you start using a human as a tool, that relationship gets kind of toxic. Once one part of a relationship starts using the other part of a relationship as just a means to an end. To eliminate that, you eliminate the humanity, which is reducing cognition. Take it a step forward, we see AI is going to be the next level of evolution. Reduce the humanness. Use AI or artificially intelligent robots to serve your purposes instead of a human. Like I said, robots, they don't think for themselves. So they can be led and manipulated and used as a tool, as I said. Klaus Schwab mentioned about the unity of physical, biological, and digital ID is what he said. We're going to dive into that in the next video, digital ID. But nowhere did he say anything that reserves our humanity. So these are why we have to dive deep and see what's really going on with this great reset. And even that word reset, a reset is not building upon anything. If a reset is necessary, you're either admitting that what we have now is inefficient, which it is, but it's never admitted directly. When a business concentrates on capital more than it does on facilitating evolution, it's basically entertainment. Entertainment does not care about the task of facilitating evolution primarily. And that's on the spectrum. You have, certain forms of entertainment that have some aspects of facilitating and enhancing evolution, and then you have some that are just pure entertainment, pure capitalism. Entertainers get paid so much because they help fuel the machine. Like, entertainment is what fuels the cogs that work the machine. Entertainment fuels the grind. All these companies at the World Economic Forum hold all the outlets for entertainment, so they can project through entertainment, and thus capitalizing off of that entertainment, what suits them best, what serves in their best interests. So entertainment is a business model that seeks to capitalize off of you without investing in your development, or that prioritizes capitalizing over your development. So, there's some that might be right there. This is, capitalism. This is your development. And then that gap gets wider where there's businesses that really just could not care less. They just want to make money, and they get paid more again because that fuels the grind. How's that fuel the grind? Because these entertainers have money. They are ultimately financed by these globalists. Global is used a lot in Schwab's speeches that we'll get into in part 2. But they're fueled by them to keep us chasing the dollar. Us chasing the dollar keeps us grinding. In order to be able to grind without questioning too much or breaking as humans, our cognition is lowered and dampened. And I believe that's the reason why happy hour is when it is because you're in business, you're supposed to be a robot all day. Unfortunately, caring and feeling and emoting too much at your job doesn't help the company make money. You're basically tasked with being a robot. But then you can be a human again. You can go and, alcohol is often referred to as a social lubricant. People get feely and emotional on alcohol. You can let those human emotions out freely. At least you're not inhibited in doing so. That's happy hour. Because you've been made to be a robot. Entertainment is what fuels that grind. They plaster all these things that you need money for. So now you got to go grind for that money to get that thing. They tell you that money is the most important thing. So I'll keep you chasing it so you can grind those gears. Part of the plan of the Great Reset is to just do away with that. Why? You can increase margins if you just have robots instead of working to keep humans in this loop of money grinding that fuels a machine. You can just use robots. We have artificially intelligent. That's artificial intelligence. So keep the intelligence, lose the humanity. That's the goal. So this is part 1. Just wanted to get into it, dig into it, into why we would even need to look into some of this stuff. We know they want to digitize us, our identities. We know that artificial organs is a priority. We want to make sure that in these business models that are going to bring these forward, that they're facilitating our growth and evolution in our lives and enhancing them, and not seeking to primarily capitalize off of us. But I think because this is a step that involves humanity, you heard it from the man himself. He runs the World Economic Forum, which was previously, I believe, like the European. I'll probably put it on the screen, the actual name. I forget what it was. It was the European something, but then it expanded to the World Economic Forum because they are globalists. That being said, it's going to affect the globe. It's going to affect all of humanity. So we all need to be aware of what's going on and on board with this next step, because it should benefit us all. So again, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next part. If you have anything to add, or if I missed a mark anywhere, let me know, and we can discuss it.